Hey everybody, Grace here. Welcome to another video. This one will be kind of short, but I wanted to talk about some recent trends that I've seen emerge at the highest level of GOAT format lately. Some very interesting things that have kind of unfolded. And I want to get you ahead of the curve a little bit so you can be aware of what's coming up, what's been kind of trending in GOAT format, and what you might potentially see here at the GOAT format World Championships that are coming up in, I guess, almost 2 weeks from now, which is crazy. So it is really cool though, like after all of these years, after all of these decades at this point that this format has been around, that it has been constantly evolving and changing and seeing how people are trying to counter the meta. And then once that becomes the meta, people are trying to counter that. And it's cool. It's nice that this format is evolving. It's, you know, like a living, breathing meta game, which is really cool in my opinion. And I think ensures the longevity of this format. It's one of the reasons I love it, is how it's constantly evolving. Cards are coming in and out of fashion depending on what's currently in fashion. So it's definitely interesting to see. So what we're looking at today is a deck that I have seen kind of emerge recently to kind of hedge its bets against the metagame. Now I have to give credit to where I've seen this. I saw this in the GOAT format World League playoffs, originally played by Chris Perovic, and then I've seen other players on Team Overdose playing similar lists, such as Anthony Alvarado. And then I saw in the last GOAT Grand Prix, Dale Bolito was playing something kind of similar. That it looked a bit closer to you know, Dingo Sig's Worlds return deck from last year, but at the same time, the kind of idea is still similar. It's an aggro deck that runs Zaborg. And so I've seen these great players playing this deck, and so I want to figure out why they're doing it, and that's kind of what I'm going to explore in this video. Now, I will say first and foremost, there's been different names thrown around about what this actually is. Some people have called it like a pile, just implying it's like just a pile of good cards, but I don't like that name at all. I would consider it like, you know, Zaborg aggro or something along those lines. I think is a bit more fitting to what the whole strategy is actually trying to accomplish here. And so let's talk about it. This list is not by any means definitive. This is not what exactly what Chris Perovic or Anthony Alvarado have been playing. There is no public lists out yet about what they've been running specifically, but this is just based off of the replays that I've seen. I've kind of thrown this together. So please, this is not card for card gospel of what they've been playing or anything. This is just my kind of, you know, take on it from what I've seen, and I've just kind of filled in the gaps naturally with, you know, my own guesses. So, and also I'll say I haven't really talked with any of these people about this list. I don't know, you know, really exactly what the goal is here, but I'm just kind of using my own opinion here. Of course, this is just what I think is going on. Don't you know, don't quote me on this. You can take this all with a grain of salt. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the list itself a little bit. Basically, you're looking at an aggro shell or a warrior shell, because you see the spell and trap lineups. This looks kind of similar to a, you know, kind of standard warrior list with the solemn judgments. You know, I don't know if they run 2 or 3 or even 1 solemn judgment, but I've seen solemns in the main deck. So, you know, solemns, you know, Call of the Haunted, Prima, obviously the reinforcement of the armies. These are all the kind of cards you see in a standard warrior list, along with the warriors themselves. Obviously, we have a Blade Knight, we have a Sasuke, a DD Warrior Lady, Exiled, the whole warrior package. Even you could even run a Donza Lugan here if you wanted to, whatever you're feeling. And they're running the kind of standard, like I said, warrior shell. But at the same time, what warriors do not get to do is run the card Zaborg, because a lot of the time you don't have a lot of great cards that you want to tribute off in warriors for Zaborg. Because most of the time you're going to be relying on your beaters, you're going to be relying on your Blade Knights to push for damage and your Sasukes to, you know, make efficient trades. You don't want to be tributing these cards off most of the time. It feels kind of like a minus when you're tributing these beaters off for tribute monsters. But this deck allows you to play that aggro strategy while still playing Zaborg, which is one of the best cards in the current meta against Chaos Turbo. Mainly because it deals with a lot of their really powerful turns. I mean, you know, sometimes you'll have, let's say you have 2 spies face up on your side of the field, and your opponent goes summon Chaos Sorcerer, banish one of your spies, and then set a power flip like Magician of Faith or Dekoichi, and then they end their turn. Where, this allows you, if you have a Zaborg in hand, you can tribute off your second spy to pop their face down and then attack over the Chaos Sorcerer with your Zaborg. It's basically these big advantage swinging plays that Zaborg allows you to make against Chaos Turbo. It's just a great card against that deck. It's one of the reasons I feel like, my fairy lists have had pretty good success against Chaos Turbo, mainly because I get to run Zaborg in those lists. And this card is just proven to be really, really good right now against Turbo. Point blank, period. So that is that. So you get to run Warriors, the aggressiveness of Warriors that they offer, this simplification of the game state, these gaining advantages through battle. You get to do all of the Warrior stuff while also playing Zaborg. Now, to support Zaborg, you need tribute fodder. You need monsters that you can tribute off. And like I said, this deck is kind of hedging its bets against the current metagame. It allows it to have good matchups against both Turbo and against Warriors, where if you're really hyper focusing on the Zaborg without the kind of aggro, aspect of it, your matchups aren't always as good against both of these decks, where I feel like this list is very balanced at dealing with both of the meta decks. So obviously, like I mentioned, Turbo, the Zaborg is great against Turbo, Blade Knight, Mystic Swordsman level 2, these are great cards against Turbo, of course, with the Dust Shoots, the Solemns to kind of simplify the game and don't allow them to set up these big, these big Trinity plays. So yeah, obviously good matchup against Turbo. Now, where can we find our advantages against the Warrior matchup? Well, first and foremost, through Zombira, which seems to be just such a popular card in the current meta right now, mainly because it deals with, defense position Chaos Sorcerers. It deals with at least one spy. It, of course, deals with all the Warrior monsters. So it's a great card in the current metagame, but also what people don't realize is that it's great tribute fodder, mainly because it sticks on board very often for quite a while. So you'll summon it, let's say your opponent has a tribe on board, you summon the Zombira, attack over their tribe. If your Zombira can live that next turn, let's say they set a face down monster into it, then next turn you contribute off your 1900 attack, Zombira that can't attack directly into a Zaborg. You're getting a light, you're getting a Dark into the Grave, getting a light on board to set up chaos stuff of your own. And I'll mention you can even put a Chaos Sorcerer in here. I think the ratios are good enough. I don't really have one in this deck, but I'm sure there's a way you can build it to support the Sorcerer. So that's what's really cool. Like I said, Zombira functions as great against aggro, but on top of that, it's great tribute fodder, and it's just pretty good in the current metagame. And obviously, it's searchable off of Rhoda. It's a body that sticks on board. Kind of people think about this card against Warriors, especially newer players. They see that it's being sided by, some of the best GOAT format players, and they'll bring it into their deck and they'll, attack over their opponent's Blade Knights, and, Sasuke is with it, etc., etc. But really, some of the good players, depending on the situation, obviously, but a lot of times they just summon the Zombira and attack and then just leave it. They just leave it sitting there for a while as a wall, basically an attack position Gravekeeper Spy, because we know Gravekeeper Spy is good against Warriors. So other ways that you kind of support these Zaborgs, while basically all of these cards that support Zaborg are good against Warriors, and Zaborg is good against Turbo. So you're really, like I said, hedging your bets against both matchups. So like I mentioned, these cards that are good against Warriors that support the Zaborg are the Gravekeeper Spy, of course. Everybody knows this card is just super popular right now. It's a great tribute fodder because you can, tribute off the second one. It's great at walling out your opponent as well as being aggressive. People underrate the 2400 damage that you can, smack in with this into an open field. So, yeah, just a great versatile card that supports your Zaborg as well as being good against Warriors. And that's the same thing with this whole tomato package right here. Now, I don't know the exact ratios these, people are playing, but this is just kind of my guess at it. Tomato kind of finding its way back into the metagame again. These recruiters, such as Shining Angel and others, are kind of finding their way back into the meta, and that is mainly because the emergence of Zombira, as well as the emergence of Mind Control in the main deck, which that's been around for a bit, but really the popularity of Zombira is great against these recruiters. Because eventually they're going to have to attack over it, or they attack into your face down version of it with the Zombira. They lose 200 attack, and you just get another one, or you get a Sankin, or you get a Reaper, and then deal with their face up, Zombira, whatever. Your next turn, attack over it with a boosted Blade Knight, and then get in there with your Spirit Reaper. So Spirit Reaper, like I mentioned, great against aggro. All of these cards are great against aggro, as well as being great tribute fodder for the Zaborg. So That's kind of the whole idea of this deck. It's hedging its bets against both matchups by being aggressive, while at the same time being able to support great Chaos Turbo counters like Zaborg. So that's kind of the idea for it. I think it's really, really cool. Yeah, I'm interested to see how this deck continues to evolve, if it starts to see play more, or if people start to find ways to counter it. It'll be interesting to see. I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes closely on the meta over the next few weeks, especially at the World Championships. It's going to be huge. There's going to be a lot of metagaming going on, trying to figure out what people are playing. And I definitely think you'll see some players playing some variation of a Zaborg aggro type strategy. I think it deals well with both of the best decks in the format. And on top of that, I feel like this deck has a better matchup against control than standard Warriors does. So I really feel like we're going to see a trend of Warrior players moving to something like this, and even some Turbo players moving to something like this because it has such a good matchup against both. But at the same time, if this becomes popular, then people are going to find ways to counter this, and the cycle continues. So I just thought that was interesting, seeing these decks start to kind of emerge in the meta, how things have sort of changed, seeing the recruiters kind of come back into fashion a little bit. And yeah, I think that summarizes it well enough. So yeah, thank you all for watching this video very much. I appreciate it, and I will see y'all around. Bye.